Welcome to the Voices of Victory channel. How to leverage your ancestral wisdom, the biological reality. If we look into the past, it holds a great deal of information that can help us in the present. And we've become accustomed to pushing away the past or wanting to destroy the past or squash the past or change the past in some way, shape, or form. That we have to be forward moving and forward thinking. And we get in this conundrum between past and future, and we rarely stop to think about the truth. And that truth is, what can you do today? I'm going to go over this workshop because this is literally the biological reality of ancestral wisdom. I'm going to cover each key point a little at a time. So follow along. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. You want to watch this all the way through because the first point is just as valuable as the last. Let's begin. The very first key point, which is a truth, is you are an unbroken chain of survivors. What that means to you is every one of your ancestors survived long enough to reproduce and to keep going. Thousands of generations faced famine, war, hard times, disease, uncertainty, and of course hardship. You exist because they adapted, whether you knew them or not. The point isn't to be motivated about it. The point is evidence, because evidence reinforces your identity. It makes you stronger. Your biology was molded and shaped by survival and adaptation. So the functional step for this piece right here to ask yourself is, when you're facing a challenge, stop asking, can I do this? And ask yourself, what adaptation is required here? And you can even ask yourself, what did my ancestors? Now, you don't want to compare yourself because your journey is not their journey is not your journey. But there's wisdom in that ancestry somewhere that helps you work through what you're going through today. Know that. How do we know that there's wisdom inside this ancestry? Well, every ancestor managed challenges to reproduce. They had to go through certain challenges in order to go forward. So the problems are not unusual. The problems are normal. They're part of life. And the human nervous system evolved under constant challenge. So the difficulty that's there is the proof that you are actually alive. So a functional step from here is, when resistance appears in your life, label it. Challenge detected. I've detected a challenge. Not something is wrong. There's a challenge here. If they can do it, I can do it. That's a great way to put it. If they did it, I can do it too. Think of it as a statistical miracle of resilience, which is encoded in your DNA and who you are. Meaning, the odds of your existence are astronomically small. You are the result of countless successful adaptations. People that had to adapt over and over again. And your nervous system already contains mechanisms for learning and adjustment. And because we're in the information age now, our nervous systems are very hijacked, but we got to get back to basics. Get back to our natural aspect we are. The functional step here is replace I'm not capable with I haven't activated that capability yet. And if they can do it in the past, I can do it in the present. The truth to understand is, challenges are not roadblocks, but they are activators. They're there. Problems are going to occur. It's going to be part of our reality, but they can activate you. They can move you forward. They can be a stepping stone or a milestone to get progress. Most people see stress as a stop sign. We're having to work through stress. Stress can keep you alive. And stress can keep you going. And it's our window of tolerance. And we have to learn in modern day, how do we expand that window of tolerance? Biologically, challenge often acts as a growth signal. Muscles grow through stress. Skills grow through stress. Confidence grows through stress. Confidence grows through evidence as well. So the functional step here is, when discomfort appears, what is this challenge trying to activate in my life? What is this trying to do for me particularly? We all have a foundational capability. Think of it as a basic idea of what you're capable. Look at it that way. It's the foundational capability that waits within you. It's inside of you, meaning the potential is not installed inside you through just motivation alone. Potential is revealed, and you have the job to reveal that potential. It's revealed through action, because action creates evidence. And most capability remains dormant and chilled out until your behavior actually ignites that. It activates that. So the functional step here is, stop searching for confidence. Start searching for the next action, which is going to give you evidence, which is going to build your confidence. This is where it gets hard in 2026. It gets difficult for people. The mechanics of avoidance and action. We have a tendency to avoid things because of our nervous system, but we don't realize that action provides us with evidence, and evidence reinforces the identity. But action also provides us with information along the way that we need as a stepping stone to move forward. You're not always going to have the perfect plan, the perfect information, the perfect first step, all of the map in front of you, because the map is not the territory, and our ancestors knew that. They knew that they had a map of the mountain, but they also knew that they had to go and have an experience and discover along the way. And we've forgotten about that. Let's go forward. Brain uses progress thinking as a defense. Progress thinking means if I just plan enough or think enough, I'll be able to just keep going, and thinking turns into more thinking, research turns into more research, and we fall under the illusion that we're making progress. In actuality, what we are doing is just confusing ourselves with more information. That's what we're doing. So planning can feel productive. It makes you feel that way, but execution is everything. Research can feel productive, thinking can feel productive, and sometimes it is productive. It's great to create a journey for yourself. Sometimes it's avoidance, though, disguised as productivity. So the brain gets relief from thinking without any requiring risk, right? So the functional step here is, did I think about a whole idea here, or did I actually do something? Did I just think, or did I do? That's where it gets interesting. A lot of us want to go towards pleasure and away from pain, but our ancestors, every generation had to fight 3 times harder than the previous. That's the thing. Some people might say, oh, well, my ancestors had it easy. They had it this way. You got to consider the times that they were in. You have to consider their scenario. We only know what we know. We have the tendency to fill in the blanks mentally based on what our parents told us or based on what we knew and understood. We have that tendency to fill in those blanks, but we don't really know what their journey was. And their journey is not our journey. Our journey is not their journey. However, they have information that we can understand and we can learn from. The key idea here is discomfort of action is avoided. That's what happens, is the brain naturally prefers certainty. We all want to be certain about what's going to happen next because it's part of our safety. And our phones have become part of this generation to where people will look up the next thing in order to make that uncertainty go away. And we fall into that trap of misinformation, overinformation, overwhelm. It's all there. And our nervous systems are getting activated as a result of that. Action creates uncertainty. That is a given. Okay, the brain naturally prefers certainty, and action creates uncertainty. Therefore, avoidance feels safer. And the problem is avoidance creates larger problems later. So the functional step here is expect discomfort, understand. If you can't expect it because your brain's having a hard time with that, understand that it's possible and stop treating discomfort as a stop sign, as a stop signal. Over to psychology, we could look at something called behavioral activation, which is awesome at the end of the day. Action creates motivation more often than motivation creates action. That's more important. So waiting to feel ready will delay your progress. I'll be ready when I have this. I'll be ready when I have money. I'll be ready when my mindset is in the right place. And ready never comes. So waiting to feel ready delays your progress. Movement changes your emotional state. So the functional step here is act first. The information will show itself. Act first. Feel motivated second. Once you get positive results, understand you can get more motivated from that. If you get a negative result, see if that negative result has some hidden or buried value in it. So this way you can learn from it and use it to adapt like our ancestors did, because it's all about adaptation. At this point in time, you're going to take action. We have to use small steps or tiny steps. And we're looking at the bits and pieces and the fragments that are actually there. The brain avoids large threats, anything that is deemed large. So I had this question with a friend, someone who I actually was helping, and I said, do you like to run? And I said, yeah, it's okay. I said, can you run 3 miles? Oh, no, I can't do that. Okay. Can you run across a parking lot? Yeah, I can do that. That is where you start. You're going to run across once, and then you're going to rest for a minute or two on the other side, and then you're going to run again, and you're going to rest. in between each one. And you're just going to do the parking lot a couple times. So using small steps or tiny steps, because the brain avoids large threats. It sees a large threat. Our brain says, sorry. We dig our heels. Shrink the task until the resistance drops. Okay. Very important. We're dealing with our nervous systems in 2026, which are overloaded. We're overloaded in our minds. So write one sentence if you're a writer. Don't clean the house. Just clean one shelf. Because what you'll discover when you do this is you'll start doing more. You'll get momentum. You'll start doing more than you actually thought you were capable of doing. So don't clean the house. Clean one shelf. So functional step here is reduce every task to something that you cannot reasonably fail. You want to be on that edge between comfort and discomfort, right on the edge. You're not coming out of your comfort zone. You're coming right to the edge where you're comfortable just enough. And you're doing that to get your nervous system in the right place so you can take more action. We can go over the mechanics of action. This is where it gets interesting. I'm moving right along. When we take a look at this, so we have the discomfort of action. All right, and the discomfort of action is normal. It's a normal idea, meaning our ancestors had to deal with it. They don't have the information overload that we have now, but they had to deal with feeling anxious. They had emotions. They had feelings. Anxiety before action is often a prediction. It is not reality. So the discomfort is usually in your anticipation of the future. You are projecting into the future. So the functional step here is expect or understand discomfort before starting. Have an understanding that it can be there. Judge the task after the action, but learn to avoid that inner critic and beating yourself up. Evaluate fairly. Be fair. Use metrics that are fair in terms of how you evaluate. Judge the task after the action, not before. Because this is where people will kick off with their inner critic, beat themselves up. The reason why they do that is because they're attaching the outer results to the inner self-esteem. We want to learn to evaluate and use metrics that are going to be best suited for our self-development. Where we use behavioral activation. Action interrupts the avoidant loops that are actually there. So you don't want to run, go run anyway. But don't feel the need to run 3 miles unless you really want to. Run that parking lot from one side to right. Come to that edge so much so where it becomes manageable. That's the thing. The smallest movement begins your momentum. One functional step here is take one physical action within 60 seconds. That's it. That's all it is. Not hard. Just that. Start small and go from there. Small fragments are important. Small fragment meaning. We have to be able to collect meaning. And we have to be able to collect evidence. So tiny wins bypass your overwhelm. If you don't count your wins don't count. The reason why people don't count their wins is because they compare their wins. And they compare their wins to the rest of the world. Understand this truth. Their journey is not your journey. Your journey is not theirs. Your ancestors can actually provide you with some of that wisdom, but your journey is still yours today. We have to identify that. So the tiny wins count. If you don't count your wins don't count. It's very straightforward. So learn to have a win site, a list of wins, and count them no matter how small they are. And stop comparing your journey to the rest of the world because their journey is not your journey. Progress becomes possible when you do this. The functional step is keep shrinking the task until resistance disappears. And count those wins and create a win site list. Count those wins or those wins don't count. A lot about action, and action creates a wonderful cycle, a wonderful loop. This is the feedback loop of action, which is going to help us. And that being said, we can go on to the next one, which is really going to bring us down here. And we're going to deal with the stressors. People are going to get stressed. You're going to have stress. Your ancestors had stress. You're going to have stress. Stress hasn't changed. What has changed is our overwhelm and our nervous system. And we have to learn to adapt and identify stress. Everybody wants to push stress away. It's not about pushing it away. It's about managing it and creating a window of tolerance that gets bigger. So identify your stressors, okay? Meaning vague problems create vague solutions. So you have to have a specific problem and create specific solutions for it. Get granular, get particular. The functional step here is define exactly what you are avoiding. Define it and define it clearly. Small fragmentation meaning. So the first step must feel easy, not impressive. That's the thing. People want to be impressive because that becomes part of comparison culture. It's not impressive. It is easy enough. And you can up the ante at any point in time. The functional step here is find the smallest entry point. If you want to go run, you're going to have to run. You're going to have to activate that behavior. How do you do that? Run across a parking lot. Well, that parking lot's too big. Find a smaller parking lot. Find a smaller distance. Run on your property. Measure it with a tape measure and then run it. Whatever the case may be, find that smallest possible entry point. You have to step into execution. And our ancestors, they were people who executed things. Maybe they always didn't execute it right. And of course, we as modern day people, we can judge them harshly up and down. We can do all that. People will do that. They'll judge their ancestors. But when we look at execution, maybe they had an ability to execute things. Maybe we could learn from what they were afraid of as well. What were they afraid of? They had feelings. They had cold. They had heat. They had temperatures. They had problems. They had stress. Always, it was different. It's different for every generation. Every generation has to push past the previous one. That's one thing we can see consistently. So execution meaning is that action produces information. Thinking rarely does. It'll give you creative ideas, but you have to be able to execute that. Aha. So the functional step here is complete the tiny step. No evaluation, no harsh inner critic, just execute. Looking at biological activation, we are life, right? Bio connects to the word life. Completed actions create evidence. Evidence gives you information, reinforces into your identity. So evidence changes your beliefs as well, because you learn that your preconceived notions were wrong. And you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe I just learned something. So beliefs change your identity, but a lot of times when you take action, your beliefs will update like a piece of software. The functional step here is record the win, record it immediately. Count your wins and count them fast. No comparison culture. Just look at your wins. Their journey is not yours. Off to the last one is that hierarchy of value. This is goal setting. Understand goals are important to have, but the good news is systems are going to move you forward. Having a system that works, and some people have difficulty with the consistency. Keep in mind, your consistency can be built or created from the smallest possible thing. So it doesn't have to be big, but you have to create a system of some sort. Sometimes other people have systems that already work. And that's what it's all about. Let's go ahead and move the next path here. So small goals equal limited activation. The tiny goals can build consistency. That's what they can be there for, right? You're trying to get healthy. You can do one healthy item a week. And you can introduce a new item each week. A carrot this week and celery the next. You get the idea. So with that being said, tiny goals can build consistency, but they may not fully activate ambition. So we have to use small goals for starting, but it's not necessarily for the vision itself. That's where it gets really crucial. Excitement can be pretty powerful, and you can ask yourself, is this goal crazy enough? A meaningful goal should stretch you. And that's the problem, is people don't want to stretch because they feel like they're losing their old identity. People fear change because they feel like they're going to lose who they are. But you're really not losing who you are. You are updating who you are. So a meaningful goal should stretch you, not destroy you, not bore you. A goal should feel exciting and slightly intimidating. So you got to find that sweet spot once again, just right on the edge of that comfort zone, but just tough enough. Does this goal scare me enough? That's the question to ask. Big goals, having a big goal is important, but having a system to get there is just as equally as important. So big goals actually unlock your potential. Large goals force growth. And a lot of people don't like that. Their nervous system says, force. Oh, I don't like it. I'm afraid. And that's what happens is our nervous system kicks off. They require new skills, behaviors, and thinking. So sometimes when you have a system that starts small and becomes a logical progression going forward, then you develop new behaviors, new beliefs, and new ways of thinking. So the functional step here is create a goal that requires a new version of yourself. Then think about what systems already exist in place that can actually get you to be able to bridge that gap. Our ancestors were very smart, very intelligent, and if they weren't, they made mistakes, and maybe they made mistakes And history does indeed repeat itself. It has its repetition. It has repeated itself, but it's here to teach us how to move forward without going through the repetition, because humans are patterns. Behaviors are patterns. The past has all kinds of patterns. What can history teach us? It can teach us all of the patterns that exist. Patterns of thinking, patterns of emotions, patterns in our nervous system. So we're learning to bridge the gap. Transformation and transforming who you are it's not changing your identity. It's actually just making updates, tiny updates to who you are. Transformation is the result of action, meaning people often wait for confidence. Confidence usually arrives after evidence, and evidence comes from action. So act before you feel ready, but just make it small enough to where like, okay, I'm good with that. And you can do that and keep going. There is a space that actually exists. This is the space that your challenges are postponed. And, I believe that some of our ancestors really didn't have much of a choice, and if they did, maybe they foregoed the choice. You got to remember they had successes, but they also had failures as well. We tend to look more at the failures and less at the success. So here's the deal. Your future is often hidden behind tasks that you've actually delayed because you've been putting things off. So the functional step here is list every task that you've actually been avoiding. When we're dealing with avoidance, because that's what we do, right? We don't work through our fears. We can look at the avoidances and write them down and measure them. Measure. We're not judging. We're just measuring. Because avoidance leaves clues. Where resistance actually lives, growth usually lives too. So you can ask yourself the question, like, where in particular am I getting resistance, right? Growth is there as well. If you have a history of getting success in one area, like, what was that area that gave you the success, right? So the functional step here is ask, what am I repeatedly postponing over and over? We need to look at the pattern. Your patterns are like a lock on a cage, and the only way to get out of that cage is to analyze the lock and writing it down on paper, figuring it out, and then you can break free. We could always wait till tomorrow. We play the I'll be ready when I get there tomorrow. I'll be ready when this happens. But act now. Act today. Behavior activation can bring that action and bring that information. You don't have to be planning everything out, and we don't need to search 50 YouTubes and 50 podcasts. And we try to acquire in the information age all of this information that settles our mind, because if we feel that our mind is settled, our nervous system is settled, because like, oh, I know what to do, I know what this is. But we have to learn to live experientially. And that's another thing our ancestors taught us. The most valuable nugget of information on this episode today is that our ancestors actually taught us that you are not always going to be ready. That's simple. And that the map is not the territory. When you're going to a mountain, having the map of information isn't really the actual experience. They were trying to teach us to live experientially. And we don't do that anymore. We live informationally because the information tricks us into believing that there's progress. Potential is not unlocked by understanding. It's unlocked through experience, experientially living. Potential is unlocked by behavior activation, because behavior will reveal some information. It may not be the information you always want, but it'll reveal the information. So functional step, choose one action, do it today and not tomorrow. Over the entire system as a process right here. Let's break it all down. All right. So this is what our ancestors have done. Identify what you're avoiding. Define those things that are stressing you, the exact stressors. Shrink it to an impossible to fail or safe to fail action. Execute it immediately. Get the information from it. Record the evidence of completion from it. Repeat it daily. Set a goal large enough to require growth, but look at what systems can get you there. You can look at avoidance and you can audit that every week. Audit means just evaluate that avoidance just a little bit at a time. Turn your action into evidence, because evidence contains information. That information moves you forward. Action moves you forward because it provides you with info. Turn the evidence into your identity. So remember, if you don't count your wins don't count. And you have to be able to realize that their journey is not your journey. Even your ancestors' journey is not your journey. However, they've done things that we haven't, and we're living in different times now. So your journey is different than their journey, but they have information to teach us and to share with us. So the final chain is action creates evidence, which creates confidence, which reinforces your identity, gives you more capability, your confidence of your capabilities, and your potential is actually realized. And that's all I'm going to say on today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Take care. Share this with someone you love. And have a great day. Take care.